Hello and welcome to the Think Dad podcast, a podcast all about engaging with young dads. My name's Robert Orton.
And my name is Jordan Richardson, and we both work for North East Young Dads and Lads, working with other young dads and their families.
In this series of podcasts, we'll be interviewing a variety of professionals, asking questions about fatherhood engagement and best practice around working with young dads and their families. Let's get into this episode.
I'm Jenny Goldstein, and I am a family law solicitor. I work at Samuel Phillips Law on Grey Street, and I've spent over 30 years working in family law, particularly with young fathers.
The first question we'd like to ask is, why do you think it is important to support young dads?
It's important to support young fathers because they are grossly unrepresented within the experience of becoming a parent. With young parents, in my experience, the focus, and I'm not saying it's not right, is on the mother and the mother's health and the baby's health and the mother's general well-being. And I completely support that. But there needs to be a rebalance, because the focus also needs to be on the child's father. Children only have one set of biological parents, and those parents are there for their lives. And it's if you don't start off involving both parents, you're already setting a dialogue that doesn't have balance to it. So in my experience as a lawyer, and I've been doing this for over 30 years, I'm not ashamed to confess to that, I can honestly say that young fathers are completely unrepresented. And that is why a charity such as Needle is so important. It's the first charity I've come across in the North East that is entirely devoted to young fathers. So it's important for a number of reasons. First of all, because there's no representation for young fathers. The focus isn't on the father, it's on the mother, and there needs to be a balance there. But also, most importantly, from the child's point of view, children need to have both parents involved in their lives. All the research shows how important that is. And I think we as a society have struggled to address that issue.
Based on that, obviously you've been in this profession for a very long time. So your experience is you've come across probably every, I would imagine every circumstance when it comes to representing families through courts or giving advice through mediation and things like that. So would you say that it's more of a recent stigma towards young fathers where they're not represented enough at the moment, or has that always been the case since you began?
I think that's a really good question. Unfortunately, it's not recent. It's always been the case. And if anything, there are more moves towards, recognising the importance of young fathers, but we haven't gone far enough. But it was even worse 30 years ago. It was, 30 years ago, even older fathers were sidelined. And it was a very poor and difficult situation, because while the mothers usually, I know it's stereotypical, but 30 years ago, gender roles were very tightly confined, and usually the mothers would get what you called was custody, which we don't have anymore, and they would be the people who had all of what we now know as parental responsibility, but they wouldn't be supported. So, where was the father? The Children Act came into being because the government realised in young offenders courts, etc., the parent with custody was there, and they realised it was the mothers, and they started to question, well, where are the fathers? So we're having these discussions are so important, because the more we raise the profile in relation to the issue of young fathers, the more it will become, accepted and normal, and people will challenge themselves as to whether they are actually involving young fathers.
So presently, what do you think good support looks like for young dads within your profession?
Well, good support for young fathers is getting them access to the right advice and guidance. Good support at a fundamental level is making sure they understand their legal position in relation to their child. And that can be quite a surprise for many young fathers, because they've no idea. And possibly their own parents have no idea. So the first thing is the importance of them understanding that if they're registered on the child's birth certificate, their legal rights and responsibilities for that child are the same as the mother's. And I say that to so many young fathers, and I can see them commuting it, but actually fully accepting that to be the case is another leap. And I think that's because everything seems to work against them. So they've got me, the lawyer, saying, right, you're on the birth certificate, so you have equal parental responsibility. You each have 100%, not 50-50. You each have 100%. So all the legal rights and responsibilities for your child are with you and the child's mother. Nobody else, nobody can take it away from you. That's there for life. And they're like, okay, right. And then they go out into the world and they deal with, education, with health, with welfare rights, etc. And that's not translated into what happens on the ground. And so they're beginning to step back all the time, stepping backwards, feeling diminished in relation to their role in their child's life. So it's really important that they understand that, and it's constantly reinforced. So they stand up and say, actually, the law's on my side here, and we sort of, gently but firmly re-establish that message with everyone we're with, and do it, demonstrate the commitment by talking. And I often say to young fathers, have you spoken to school? No, I'm not able to collect from school. Mum won't let me. I don't have anything to do with school. I don't know what's happening. I don't get invited to anything. And actually, I said, if you contact the school and explain who you are, most schools nowadays will be, oh, great. And you could say, can you let me know when there's a parents' evening? Is it possible for me to come along? Just check in. Don't you check in once every half term, and they'll start doing that with support, because it's nerve-wracking, and they'll start thinking, gosh, right, okay, fine, I'm entitled to know this, and be involved. Okay. So what do they need? They need, in terms of support, they need, because knowledge is power, they need that basic information, and then they need support to implement that information.
That's a great example. Like, I definitely agree with that on the whole terms of dads need to know what their limits are and what they can achieve. Because most dads just think, oh, well, I've got to go to court now, I'll just give up, because they don't know where to go from there.
Yeah. So in terms of, we'll just try one example. I mean, you've given a good description of as Jordan said, knowledge is power. The more information that young father has, he's able to, look after his well-being as well. But if a young father approached you today, would it just be a simple case of inviting them to the office or a place to talk and just sitting down with them and giving them advice?
First of all, yeah, we do a telephone referral. to find out if it's something we can help someone with. And then we'd set up a meeting, and they could come to the office, or we could do it on Zoom or telephone, wherever they're comfortable with. A young father in the age group we're talking about, I would usually suggest to them they brought a mate with them, or a relative, somebody else, because it's your child. Anything to do with your child or your family is deeply emotional and upsetting, particularly if you're feeling you're being sidelined, you're scared, you don't understand. If you're young, you've got so many other things going on in your life. This is uncharted territory, and you're being asked to a very young age of, face up to things that most people would work into gradually in terms of, their maturity and development. So there's a lot going on, and you're very upset and emotional. You might not show it, because I get some pretty hard-nosed young fathers who look pretty tough, and I'm like, but I know that they're churning up inside. So it's good if someone can come with, because you might not hear what I'm telling you. Okay. And I'm very conscious of that. And so what I do then is I call it a bird's eye meeting, because I'm trying to give a bird's eye view of your situation. And what I say to my young fathers is, I'm going to go through just about everything. It's probably the longest meeting we're going to have. I'm then going to send you a note in bullet points, so you can just think, Jenny mentioned this, I don't think I took it in. And you've got a little note, and you can go and look at it and think, that's what that means. And so, my aim is in that meeting to get the message across that, the father shouldn't be withdrawing. He has, on a legal basis, exactly the same status as the mother. He's just got to use charm and persistence to persuade the professionals that the family are dealing with to involve him. And if not, we will go down the court route. So I will, first of all, make sure the father, as much as I can, understands the biggie. Your legal status is the same as the mother. And then I will talk to the father about how to progress that in a constructive way to avoid going to court if we can do so, and to start building up a dialogue with mum, or if mum's young, you've obviously got mum's family involved, maybe you've got social services involved, and start keeping little things like notes if you can. Now, some people's literacy skills are not up to that, so they just record a note on the phone. Just something you can gather together and send to us if we say what's happened, why has this happened, what's been going on. Just something, because you're not going to remember, because it's too emotional and upsetting. It's easier to forget. So that's what I do. And then I try and put them in touch with organisations like Needle, other charities, depending upon, social services are involved. There's some other charities that specifically deal with social services. I might say Needle and the other charity. And so that we can build a sort of circle of support around them. Because I can't be that support, I'm the lawyer, but I can use my knowledge and my contacts to help them get that support.
On the third question, it would be, in your work, what challenges have you faced, or would you face in engaging or supporting young dads?
The biggest challenge working with young fathers is they have so many doors shut in their face, they become dispirited, and they get so understandably upset, they walk away. And I know that walking away at that moment will make someone feel better, because they think they've just left the issues behind them. But I also know that in the long term, that isn't going to make you feel better. It's going to make you feel worse. So keeping the young father on the road to sorting it out when there are so many obstacles on that road is my biggest challenge, without a doubt. Because I can say, your legal status is the same as the mother. And that is the truth, obviously. But when they go out into the wider world, they feel, hang on a minute, that's not what's happening. So that's my biggest challenge.
I think, yeah, I think with that, with how you've explained that as well, I think it's harder for the young father to acknowledge what you're saying, even though you're the professional, when they're going back out into their lives, the world, and getting different opinions and advice from other people, including family and friends, or having disputes between their ex-partner's family, feeling like they don't have the first say when it comes to their own children. So I think that's that challenge itself, on the back of all that, makes it even harder for you as well, and puts a strain on their, again, mental well-being too.
It's really hard, because why should your child not have both parents involved in its life? It seems so obvious, doesn't it? And then you find you can't progress that. So, and you don't have the life, when you're young, you don't have the life experience. Even older fathers I deal with don't have that life experience, and not being able to understand it's a really imperfect world, and you have to chip away at it. And if I can get my clients to understand, we're not going to get a perfect outcome to start with, but we're going to have a beginning, and we're going to build on that beginning. That would be marvelous. But when you're young, that's so difficult to see the longer picture. And I'm not being critical of young fathers for that at all. I remember being young, I thought I could conquer the world. It took me, 60 years to understand that wasn't entirely possible.
Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you.
And finally, what are your 3 top tips for other organisations who want to better support young dads?
First of all, you need to make sure that you are able to give the young father confidence in your organisation, so that they're comfortable, they know that this is where they're going to get some help and support, right? So that's the first thing. And I think Needle do that really well. The second thing is making sure there's 2 levels of support in that organisation. Professional support from workers who've come from that kind of social care background and have the knowledge and experience over the years to provide that professional support, and also professional support from peers. There mustn't be anything better than being able to talk to another young father who has been in exactly the same situation as you and is in a different place now. That, to me, is absolutely the golden nugget for an organisation like Needle. And I think that's one of the big reasons it is so successful, is that people like you two, Robert and Jordan, you're there, you've done it, you're working with the organisation, you are amazing peer support. I'm a mature lady who's a lawyer. I'm not viewed in the same way. So that is crucial, that peer support. And then the third thing is being able to support fathers the whole way through the process. And most importantly of all, the fourth thing is building up their confidence. If you're young, and this has happened, I've got at the moment, I've got a young father who didn't even know that he was going to become a father to the day the baby was born. And he's still in education. And so gets a shocking message. Oh, by the way, I've just had a baby and you're the father. The shock of that, when you think, oh, I'm going out with my mates at the weekend and we're going to do this and that, suddenly your world is just shaken. Got to tell your family and friends. And then, you're on your own. You suddenly, so you go along and say, right, what can I do? Can I support? And you're pushed away. And if you can talk to peers and you can be part of an organisation that does a lot of confidence building work, you can suddenly, it starts to all come together. But lack of confidence, lack of knowledge, huge obstacles, but with the right support, it's possible to overcome them. So I think it's a holistic, my overall answer is, you said, what 3 things? And I've probably given you 4 or 5. But I think the reason is I'm talking about holistic support that covers a whole range of issues that the young father needs to work on to progress his position. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Jenny.
My pleasure. Great questions. I enjoyed that.
You have been listening to the Think Dad podcast with Jordan Richardson
and Robert Orton. This podcast has been produced by NHS Cumbria Northumberland Tyne and Wear, the North East Young Dads and Lads and the University of Lincoln. If you'd like to find out more about our work, please visit the North East Young Dads and Lads website at www.neydl.uk or our bespoke e-learning platform at www.digidad.uk. That's www.digidad.uk.
Until next time, thank you for listening.